A couple of years ago I built these hive stands out of PVC pipe. It's 1-inch pipe with a bunch of different fittings. They've served me really well and I have them throughout my yard here, but I was thinking that after looking at something I saw in a local box store that maybe I could change the design and go with something a little bit different. I saw in a local box store a shelving unit that you could buy to build shelves for your garage. And I liked the way the top looked, and I thought maybe I could retrofit my hive design, my hive stand design, and use the grid for something on the top. So today what we're going to do is show you how to build one of these hive stands. This is a storage unit I purchased. It's the HDX brand and it's 36 inches by 18 inch. 18 inch being the length of the top. It's got 5 shelves in it, but because there's only 4 sections of tubing, you can make 4 stands. You could potentially figure out how to build shelving for the bottom unit. I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. One of the things about the size of this is being 36 by 18, it's the right size for a bottom board, depending on how you want to put it. Let me show you what I mean. I have this bottom board, and as it sits on here, it sits perfectly with a little bit of edge. And the good news is this extra space gives you a place to set your smoker down or your tools while you're working the bees. You could always put this way too. It'll hang over a little bit on the back and on the front, which I don't think is going to be a problem. Now they make these shelving units in a deeper depth also. So if you wanted to buy a bigger shelf, you'd pay a little more money, but you can do that. So one of the things that I also have here is the primer and the PVC paint, or the PVC cement. And I have here a clear cleaner. Now this is purple primer, and when you prime the PVC, you're going to see a purple stain from that. In plumbing, that's actually viable because it shows you that the PVC has been primed, but in our case it kind of looks ugly. I'm actually going to paint this stand with some plastic paint a little bit later, so I'm okay with using the purple primer. I think you could use this clear cleaner and then just go right to the cement when you put your pieces together. So now I'm going to get to assembly. So one of the last things I wanted to show is this PVC cutting tool. You can cut PVC with a chop saw, you can cut it with a hacksaw, you can cut it with something else, but this makes the easiest, cleanest cuts. It doesn't always cut straight, but in our case, whether the ends are a little bit crooked, that doesn't matter. Let me show you what I mean by that. Right now the device is closed. You just pull it out and it opens the blade. I already have my mark on here, and you just squeeze it, and with very little effort you cut right through and cut the plastic. Now this end isn't necessarily square. You could take a piece of sandpaper and sand it this way to get it clean, but to me it doesn't matter. It's going inside of a fitting, and it's okay that it's not necessarily square. And keep these short little pieces around. Sometimes you need shims. So get yourself a cutting tool. It makes the job so much easier. So the first part of assembly is the uprights that come with the stand that you buy from the kit. As you can see, they're a little bit longer, and I want mine to be 11.5 inches. What I did was I cut it in this box with this saw. Now I know you could probably try and cut it with the PVC tool, but it seemed to be a little more brittle, and when I tried it a couple times it cracked, so I just did it by hand using this miter box, and it was pretty easy. The piece that you cut off, you want to save. You're going to use that a little bit later. So I'm going to start by inserting all 4 corners into the top of the bracket. The one thing you note is that when you shove these in here all the way, they stick out a little bit. So to that point, I've put a piece of plywood underneath so that I can allow for that edge to be up a little as I assemble it. So the first part of the construction is to build the end tubes, and to that point I've taken a 3-way and I've inserted this 12-inch piece, and I'm going to slide it down inside the tube until it sits flush. I have another 3-way with a 12-inch sitting inside the tube here. And then what I have here is a 14-inch piece that's going to go between. Now these are dry fit for right now while I go through, and I'm actually going to glue these pieces here. Okay, let's repeat the procedure for this end. One way to know if you have it primed well enough is as you run this around, if there's any writing on it, it removes the writing. And this is doing a chemical reaction which is softening the outside layer in preparation for the glue. So there was writing on here across, and I can see where I've cleaned it off that there's no writing at all. So there you know you got it. I usually don't fuss as much inside the fittings, so they tend to be a little cleaner from the store. So in quarter turn, and let me tell you, if you don't get it right, you're done, because as soon as you make that quarter turn and set it, it's frozen. It is done. So don't mess around. When you're going to go put it in and press it as hard as you can and get it set. Now here what I like to do is once I get it here, I make sure that it's square and it's set and I've got the right dimension. You can see it's sticking out a little bit here, so I'm actually going to push it in just a little bit. That's going to square it up a little more. It's still a little bit soft and you have a little give, but you're not going to get a lot out of this. And I could have probably put it together a little more, but that's it. It's done. So let's go build the middle and the bridge. In the reference design you saw earlier, this is one piece with a T in the middle, and it has a hoop that goes down and comes back up on this side, just like this. The reason I made the hoop is this is not actually as strong as I'd like it to be, and so just as an insurance policy, I'm going to create this little bridge that goes across here that supports the middle of this frame. I think this overall top is rigid enough and has enough reinforcement that'll hold a hive, but I'm not going to take the chance on that. So the way I'm going to recommend that you build this is build your pieces at a time. You're going to build this piece, which is going to be that hoop, first, and then you'll build these long runners and you'll put it together without the top on it. I'll explain in a second. One of the reasons you want to build these separately is you could set it on the table and you can make it 90 degrees this way and make sure it's flat so that when you put it here it's all going to mark up. I'll show you in a sec how we do that. So I'm going to build this hoop, and right now it's dry fit, and notice I've used 2 spare corners. The reason for that is I want this to be 90 degrees flat, and I'm going to use these 2 spare corners to make sure that it's up off the table and flush for the corners over here. So I've put a corner on, it's all dry fit, and I put this corner on and I'm going to rotate it till it's flat down on the table. Now when I put it all together and glue it, I know that it's going to be perfectly square. think I'm actually going to let this dry a little better. Come over and do this one. Now before it dries, I'm going to press it down on the table to make sure that I have this fitting square, and I do. Same thing for this side. In, quarter turn, make sure it's seated, set it down, make sure it's square on the table, and let it dry. And I know that it's good. No twist. If you don't get these pieces square, you're going to get twists and turn in your hive stand, and you really don't want that. You want it to be as square and as flush as possible. So 2 more joints to weld. My guess is there's probably a plumber out there somewhere that's telling me I'm going to do this wrong. Forgive me, novice. I just knocked it over behind me. So this one's the important part, that you get it square. So put your glue on, set it, and then get it down on the table quickly so that you make sure that you have it set up. So here it's on the table and it's flat and it's square. Now that makes a good joint and everything is set, so I'm in a good place. And I know later when I connect this to the other part, it'll all sit correctly. And now I can take these extra corners off that I have, because I don't need them. So the next part of the job is just to put these long runners together that hold the hoop. Just a couple welds here. Sometimes dry fit, so tough to get apart. This stuff really smells bad. You want to do it out in a ventilated place. The acetone and the ketones or whatever is in this is really pretty potent stuff. I'm going to do the other side right away too. This purple stuff really stains and it never comes out. So when you're doing this, make sure you're wearing clothes that you don't want to ruin. Or that you can ruin. Let me say that a different way. Of course, I don't want to wreck my Huey Lewis t-shirt. That would be a sin. The good thing about building these systems is PVC is really pretty cheap in the grand scheme of things. So easy to work with. I think all in all this kit's not going to cost that much to build. Towards the end of the video I'll go figure out what my costs were. It'll let you know. So I'm going to go for the ends that I primered earlier and are dry. And these you don't have to be fussy with. I think I'm using a little too much glue here. One more. And that's that. These are ready to go. Let's put the hoop together and we'll get it all set up. So I've pulled the end pieces out of the top and I have them sitting here, and the nice thing about these square corners is that it'll sit flush on the table. Now I'm going to glue this piece and this piece together, and I'm going to turn it in, and I'm going to make sure this T-fitting lays flat, and that'll give me a 90-degree up and back, and I'm going to do it for both sides. So I'll start with these two ends and glue it together, and then I'll do the top and glue it together, and then I'll put my hoop on, and then we'll be able to just set it right down into the top. So I'm going to prime these two corners, and I'm going to get started with that. Now, one of the things I like about these Lasco corners that I found is that they really give a lot of rigidity to the corner. There's other ways that you could build a corner, but these fittings really work very nicely. So this is important. Again, you want to make sure you get this 90 degrees or you're going to have a lot of difficulty. So I'm going to put this in, and then I'm going to push this T down so it's flush. In it goes, down till it's flush. Now everything should be 90-degree corner. Hopefully I got that right. Let me do this other corner down here. Now this one's already 90 degrees flat on the table, so I should be able to just put this in and turn this 90 degree. And I'm good to go. I gotta flip it over and do the other side. This can is really full and it keeps spilling it. Good thing I have a grubby table. Now this is a little bit different because this fitting up here is done. So the bottom one you have to pull it apart, put it in, and squeeze it together. But there's enough flexibility in this that it's not a problem. Okay, inserting it in and giving it a corner and making sure that this thing is straight flush to the table, which it is. And let's do the other end. Now there's no way to quarter turn this one, so I'm just going to stick it in until it's set. Okay. Now let's put the hoop on it and see how we did. Doing this real time, folks, so it's either going to work or it's not. I'm going to tell you right now, it's perfect. It's always good when it works out for the camera. A little bit of primer here, a little bit of primer there. So in short bit, I'll give you all the dimensions for all this stuff and let you know how you could build your own if you're interested. So for this, again, you can't do a twist. All you could do is just kind of insert it. That's what I'm going to do. A little glue down in here. A little glue down in here. And I'm looking to actually seat it. So the good thing about this, when you do all these, is you want to make sure that you cut these the right length so that this turns out to be the right shape. Alright, and I put these on here for spacers before it could take them off. Now I think I'm ready to set my top on and see how it worked. So let's see how we did getting this all put together. Let me go grab the top. So here's my top assembly with the 4 original posts that came with the kit. Let's slide it on our base and see how we did. Okay, look at that. It fits, it's all good. This is lined up here to give support to this center. So that's good to go. Now the last piece of this, I had talked about these things, these posts here on the corner, I cut the bottom off and you could use the little things. So I made some shims. So when you build this originally from the kit that comes from the store, it comes with these pieces here. And these pieces go into the corner here and they create a tight fitting on the top of the rack. But because we have 4 stacks and the tubes are actually supposed to go in these, we don't have them. So what I did was I took a bottom piece off that I cut and I made an 1.5" shim, and I'm just going to put this in here, and what that does is that tightens this corner up so that it's not floppy at all. And you just press it down. Now one of the things about this is the PVC is down inside of this center tube that goes up and down, inside this center tube. And if I wanted to, I could have extended the PVC up and over and back down and built a hoop in the back to hang equipment and make a wall and make another apartment off this end if you want, whatever you wanted to do with that. I chose to just end it here. So these little things stick up, I'm okay with that. I could have trimmed those off with some sort of edge trimmer, or you could actually use them to keep stuff from sliding off. At some point you could put different things in these holes. I don't think it causes a problem. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top off of this and I'm going to paint this PVC stuff with, and not these posts in the corner, but all the bottom and whatever. I'm going to paint it with plastic paint just so it doesn't look like it's PVC pipe with all the writing on it. That's the last piece of the journey for me, but this is how you build a hive stand. If you go to the website, BKCorner.org, and look on the home page, we'll have a link to how you build one of these with all the dimensions of the parts and pieces. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope if you build your own, you send us some pictures of it. Thanks. Nice. Come on in. Come say hello. No, it's filming this way.
Why, honey, here's some lunch for you.
My guest. This is the outtake of the video, Jess. Nice. Thank you.